can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the same. And right now, I feel like $100,000.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. And I'm here with David and Sam Littlefield. I'm going to introduce them formally in a second. But David and Sam, I always like to mention other episodes people should check out. Since they have a lot, they've been doing this for, I'm going to say, over 41 years, their company's been in existence. But they have B2B, they have food, they have financial services, but I thought I'd think of some in the food space, guys. So I had Noah Alper, who started Noah's Bagels. He started one store in 1989 and built it to a chain of 38 stores. He sold to Einstein Bagels for over $100 million in 1995. But what I love about the stories and the stories of Inspired Insider is not just about the success, because we both know that there's a lot of peaks and valleys to this. And he talked about how he was selling religious tchotchkes out of the back of his trunk to make ends meet. And it wasn't always, just this $100 million sale. He started a lot of businesses, and there were some ups and downs along the way. So check out that interview with Noah Alper. It's really, really good. And there's many more on InspiredInsider.com. Even the founder of Big League Chew. I loved having him on, talking about sitting in the bullpen as a minor league pitcher and coming up with the idea for Big League Chew. And so that was an amazing story, and I just love the product too. So that and many more. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships and partnerships. And we do that by helping you run your podcast. And for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships and have the people, the companies that I admire, profiling them on my podcast so that everyone can get to know them better. So if you have thought about starting or launching a podcast, you can go to rise25.com and email us for any questions. We've been doing it for over a decade now, before people even knew what a podcast was. And so check it out. And this is brought to you by, the Spot On series with top leaders in the restaurant and food. Matt Hyman started Spot On, and they have a flagship solution, Spot On Restaurant, where they have a software and payments solution for restaurants. And they've served Dairy Queen, Quiznos, Subway, many more. This is appropriate for this episode because the Littlefield Agency helps a lot of restaurants, actually. So it was founded in 1980, believe it or not. Littlefield Agency in over 41 years has served B2B and food and financial. And they even have an official holiday every year declared by the mayor of Tulsa in June. They've been around. I mean, they've specialized in B2B and restaurant. And they've even served the Tulsa Airport, Francis Energy, Tulsa Health Department, Rib Crib, and so many more. I just want to thank Sam and David Littlefield for joining me.
Hey, happy to be here.
Good to be with you.
I know, David, we had a conversation before about how the agency started out in the services, right? And you talked about the radio, the TV, the billboard, direct mail, which first of all, I geek out on direct mail and all that stuff now. And that stuff's not even dead. But, and we're going to get into I think this is going to be fascinating, Sam, because the transition of leadership and the shift in leadership and everything like that, we're going to get into. But David, start us off over 40 years ago. What did the agency look like? What were some of the services and clients?
I started my agency in 1980 after working for two different other agencies. And both of them were, keep in mind, this is 1980, so it was a long time ago. Both of them were 100% creatively focused. And they were run by creative directors. The owners of the companies were the creative directors. And I remember the first company, as a young account manager, we were more afraid to go back and tell the creative director owner that we didn't sell his concept than we were to argue with the client that this is what they ought to do. It was nuts. And so long story short, when I started my company, my background before I got in the agency business was in sales and marketing. And I thought, people, the creative is important because that's the means to the end, but that's not why people hire an agency, they want to sell more product or
They want results.
Sell more services.
Yeah.
And so we were putting the creative cart before the marketing horse, if you will. And so I started my agency with a focus on have this be research-based, marketing-based, more of a strategic level. And so I started this as a one-man band using creative resources on a freelance basis for probably 2.5 years till I grew to a point where I could start adding the staff. And the first person that I hired after an administrative assistant was a very, very good creative director that believed in the way I wanted to do this. And so we built our company based upon marketing strategy and research, but really good creative to deliver the messaging once we know what's the most relevant message that's going to resonate with that customer for that brand.
I love that because it speaks to results. I mean, you're focused on results for the client. I mean, however you get there, but you want to get them results. And who are some of the key hires? You mentioned initially you had an admin, which is key in getting stuff off your plate, and then you had a creative director. Who are some of the other key hires throughout the years?
The first media director I had was very well respected in the Oklahoma community, and she was ready for a change. And that was a big leap of faith on her part to join me at that time because we were small, hadn't built our reputation yet. But over the years, 27 years ago, I lose track of time, we were the first agency in Oklahoma in this region to start an account planning practice. And that was a critical hire. And it was a former client that I hired. It was a very bright lady that was a very good strategist, but very intuitive. And I challenged her to come in and start an account planning practice. And that took us to a different level for 25 years. Most recently, back in the old day, there used to be an ad that people would run, the famous quote, and I can't remember the guy that said it, but I know that 50% of my advertising is wasted. I just can't tell you which 50%. You remember that? Exactly.
I think it was the one big advertising guru who said that too, right? It was someone in the industry. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so I'm going to say, Sam, 3 years ago, we started an analytics practice.
Yeah.
And it is, with everything moving, more, there's still a balance of traditional media and digital, but there's so many more tools now in that digital space where you can close a loop and track results. Those are some of the critical hires. And then I will say this, I was very fortunate. My son, Sam, went to school out in San Diego, worked for Mirum, international digital agency for several years out there before he came back and joined us. And he's been a critical hire and just a godsend.
I think he has to say that because I'm his son, Jeremy.
Actually, you could say the opposite because he's your son.
Well, I tell you what,
he could lean into you hard.
Right.
We were fortunate that, first of all, fortunate that my son wanted to be in this business, but it's fortunate for us that he had that background and fortunate for us that he's really good at this. I've got friends that have transitioned to family members and it hadn't gone so well.
Yeah.
So I would say Sam's another critical hire.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing about how this transition phase goes, because it's not easy, even if it's an outside person, let alone family. There's a lot of other factors that can complicate things as well. And I think, so I'd love to hear, Sam, to start with just the analytics practice. But I mean, I think if I went to San Diego, I don't know if I'd ever go back to anywhere else but San Diego. So
fun fact, I moved back July 26, 2016. It was 104 degrees in Tulsa. And I got off that plane and I was like, man, I made a mistake. It took me a while until we got into fall here and it was good weather and the leaves were turning. But no, I'll tell you, we actually it was a godsend. We stumbled into the analytics business, which was really fascinating how that happened. We actually, we were hiring for an account manager for a key account of ours. And we found this guy, and about 6 months in, quickly learned, his name's Chris Kaiser. Chris has been with us for 3 years. And we quickly learned that his brain works a lot differently than most account managers. He was very result oriented, very data driven. So he started suggesting some things to our clients, and we sat him down and I said, hey, what you're doing is kind of in that analytics manager role. And he goes, man, you're talking about my dream job. And so we had a transition plan. Chris basically was an account manager for us for about a year. And then we transitioned him to a full-time analytics manager, which has been huge because, to Dad's point earlier, we need results. Well, in today's age, we need results right now. What are we doing today that is working? What are we doing today that is not working? And how are we changing that on an ongoing basis? So Chris and our media director, who we actually found a media director out of Tennessee almost 1 year ago to the day. Her name's Kelly, and she's phenomenal. 20 years of food experience. So her experience tied together with our analytics manager has been a game changer.
What's interesting is both of you had worked in previous agencies before. So, and Sam, I imagine you grew up in the agency world because of your dad. For you, Sam, what observations, lessons did you learn from your dad from afar? And then also going into the San Diego experience?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting story, and I'll try to keep it short, Jeremy. Dad told me growing up, he's been in this, we grew up at the agency. We came up here after school. My mom was the CFO for 20 years. So she'd pick us up from school and we'd come, and little did I know that we were probably wrecking with everyone's day because we wanted to play around and, we throw a tennis ball around. But Dad actually, he always told me, he goes, man, never get into this business. It is a wild, crazy ride. But he goes, when times are good, it's fun. And obviously, given the pandemic this last year, when times are bad, it's an interesting business to be in. We grew up here at the agency. And so the interesting thing is, Dad said that this was a wild and crazy business when times were good. It's a fun business to be in. When it's like last year's pandemic, it's a really interesting business to be in, to say the least. So when I went out to San Diego, honest to God, I never really thought about getting in this business. I was an English major. I had aspirations to be in sales. That's kind of my natural personality fit. And I landed this job at this global agency in San Diego, and I kind of faked my way through it and somehow made it within a few years on their account management and new business development team. And I woke up one day and I was single. I was 25 years old and living in one of the most expensive cities in the nation. And Dad was at a conference up in Palm Springs. And so I drove up and took the day off and saw him. And I said, hey, I think I'm ready to come home. And Dad, I think your jaw dropped when I told you. I don't think you're expecting that, but I quickly realized that this is a really, really cool and fascinating business. Especially in today's age, there's so many different outlets to marketing. Marketing means so many different things than what it did when he started this business 41 years ago. So I've been back for 5 years now. I say, officially 5, unofficially, I turned 30 in October. I've been in this business for 30 years.
Yes.
But it's been a great 5 years for sure.
Talk about the transition. I'd love to hear both of your takes on, David, the transition, how to smoothly transition in general, and then also navigating that it's a family member.
Well,
I'll let you start, Dad.
Okay. For starters, Sam had communicated to us that we had a plan that was probably going to be a year and a half or 2 years out before we did this. But Sam sat me down one day at lunch and said, hey, you know what? I'm really ready to go. And so what we did was I made him in 2020, January, I made him president of the agency, not knowing COVID was coming. And I told him, I said, look, there's enough scenarios for potential conflict between the two of us. And the most important thing to both of us is this father-son relationship. So I said, let's try to keep the conflicts to a minimum. You run operations and help me with business development, and I'll take care of everything else. And I made him president. So that gave Sam, and then COVID hit in March, April.
Yeah.
But that gave Sam a runway, if you will, to prove to himself, to the staff here, we got 20 employees, that, okay, there's a new sheriff in town. Some things are going to change, but not a lot. And I would say everybody has been very respectful. And Sam and I are in a CEO network called Magnet. I don't know if you've talked to any magnet agencies or not, but I've been in that for over 30 years. Got some great friends in there. And Dan Nelson up in Milwaukee shared with me that when he transitioned to his son, the best advice he said he could give me was, if people come to you with a problem, tell them they got to go to Sam. Don't try to fix Sam's problems.
Yeah, and I'll
we haven't had anybody come to me.
And I'll backtrack before that, Jeremy. When I first started 5 years ago, the first thing we said when we sat down, first day, we shook each other's hand and said that, father-son relationship first, business second. And of course, we butted heads. I mean, it's inevitable. But it was tricky for me coming into an agency. Our tenure here, our average tenure is 13 years. People come and work here and they stay. It's a great place to work. It's a great work-life balance. We have these awesome clients. But coming in when people saw me at the age of 12, 13 years old, and then here's the next generation taking kind of a tricky, at times, tricky situations. To be completely honest, there's a lot of people that don't work here anymore. And that it was just kind of finding that fit. So when I approached Dad, and again, we had mapped out kind of what Dad, a 7-year plan. And after 2.5 years, I moved really quick, just as fast as I possibly can. We were on a road trip to Oklahoma City. I said, I'm ready, I'm ready to take this over. I'm ready to go. And I could tell, after 40 years, he's ready for his next phase. And so what we've been working on from a transition standpoint is how is Dad still involved on key accounts when he needs to be? I'm running operations, new business. He's in charge of the finances. But also, how do we, I have full access to a guy that has 40 years of wisdom. I couldn't have gotten through last year by myself. There's no way. I had to let go of some people because of this frickin' pandemic, which is just, it's the worst thing ever. Dad always says it takes some years off the back end of your life. And he couldn't be more true about that. But having him here as a sounding board is by far the best. I mean, his office is right there. I mean, we're 10 feet away from each other. And we have a pretty cool dynamic and relationship. We know how to turn it off when we need to turn it off. If we go and hit some golf balls together, sometimes we don't talk work. It's just father, son. So I think that's been really nice. We know a lot of people that are father, son, father, daughter, taking over companies that do not go smoothly. So we're for sure fortunate in that sense.
Yeah, no doubt.
I think, one of the things it sounded like you did is you really divided responsibilities and just gave the reins over on certain departments to Sam, which basically you are the boss now, right? What are some other things you did? And then, or maybe the opposite, what have you seen with other people's transitions that maybe they made some mistakes that you're like, well, I'm going to be sure to not do that. And when we transition.
Well, I'll start on that because in that CEO network Magnet, there's been I'm 6 or 7 agencies that I've seen transition, some to family and some to other people. And there's another gentleman, I won't name names, that wouldn't be cool, but his dad transitioned to business him and basically said, I want you to do this. And one of the first things I said to Sam when he said to me years ago, do you think I'd be any good in this business? I said, I think you'll be great at anything you decide to do. But if you want to come back from San Diego and join me in the business, it has to be your idea, not mine. Yeah. Well, this other friend of ours, his dad never said that to him. And so he not only forced his son to take over the business and fund his retirement, he never, ever really left. And so this guy was 89 years old and still showing up at work. And in this one example, took over a piece of business that he had a relationship with. And our friend is going, oh my gosh, what's going on here? So I said to myself, I'm not going to do that to Sam. I'm going to be here. I still got 1 foot in and 1 foot out. I've cut back on my hours, but I'm not going to sabotage what Sam's doing. I'm here to help him. So there was an example of me learning a lesson from someone else that I didn't want to do.
Well, and I'll add on top of that. Last year was a blessing in disguise. It's still terrible. But with that pandemic, Jeremy, and, we go to a completely remote model for months, basically the entire year. There was a lot of growing up that I had to do really, really fast. And like I said, luckily that I had his wisdom, and Dad was a great sounding board. But in part of that is there were so many opportunities from a leadership standpoint that I just had to walk into and own it and go. That I think our employees here now, the 20 others that are here, they quickly realized, okay, this is Dad calls it a new sheriff in town. I'm not the biggest fan of that saying, but hey, here's the next generation. And this is the way it's going to be. So
I'm curious, Sam. So you went to your dad and you said, I'm ready. Okay. Yeah. So I guess it was 2.5 years. Maybe he was expecting another 2.5 5 years or so. What was it to you that you thought that at that point that you were like, I'm ready now?
We have a saying, when it's the fourth quarter and there's 5 seconds left, who wants the basketball? You want the last shot. And that's kind of been instilled through my whole entire life. And I wanted the ball. I wanted key client relationships, and I developed the relationships. I started vocalizing more in meetings across the board. I started thinking differently strategically. In a new business world, I became so comfortable. It's just fun. I mean, you have, Dad's always said, clients come to us because they have a challenge and we have the solution to help them sell more stuff. And that started to click way sooner than I thought it would. And like I said, at that time, I thought I was ready. And then the pandemic happened and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a whole new set of challenges. And I had to do a lot more growing up then. But like I said, we were in the middle of a road trip to Oklahoma City, and I leaned, and I had no idea how he was going to take it. But I turned to him and I said, I am so ready. And I mean, like, I'm as ready as, I think that was in the fall. And then we announced that I was president a few months later, going into 2020 before the pandemic.
It's interesting because, everyone has different leadership styles, right? And you mentioned,
Yeah.
Because of the pandemic, you kind of just had to step up and even more in that time than any other time to kind of lead a company and lead through this crazy time. What are the differences or similarities between your two leadership styles?
Oh man,
David, I don't know. Maybe you wanna go first on that.
Well, I'll just give you one example.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know about the Enneagram. Are you familiar with the Enneagram at all?
No, I've heard the term, but I don't know.
Well, it's a personality
Myers-Briggs.
Profile like Myers-Briggs. And anyway, I'm a 6 in the Enneagram and Sam's not. And so I'll give you an example. If somebody would come to me with a little off kilter idea, hey, why aren't we doing this? My style would be, well, you know what? Let me think about that. That's a possibility. Let me get back to you. Okay. Sam, if they asked him that, Sam would go, yeah, you know what? We're not doing that.
Or to the contrary, if it's an amazing idea, boom, go and do it. Go and execute it right now. I don't have to think about it. I'm a gut oriented person. That would be my mom and me. My mom has always talked about a good gut. And so if someone come and pitches an idea and it's amazing, absolutely run, go. And sometimes our creative director, he's been here for 15 years, 16 years. And sometimes he goes, you know what, I'm going to let you sleep on that one more day before you really give me the. So
you're full steam ahead,
yeah.
Or not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And hey, if it's a terrible idea, it's not on strategy. Nope. We'll move in a different direction.
Well, Rocco, our creative director, says that to you because for 15 years, I was saying that. Okay, let me think about it. So let me give you a good example. This morning, the internet went out and we discovered that it's because the firewall with our phone system.
And he goes, hey, we have 2 years left on our contract, but we have the option to potentially get rid of our phones now. And I was like, get rid of our phones. We live in a Zoom world. We don't need phones anymore. Where, Dad might take a couple of weeks to think about it, but I was like, no, if it's a nuisance to our internet, we don't need phones. So it's little things like that. But
so my comment was, okay, well, you better keep that phone number, because I've had that phone number since 1980.
I think you can transition it to like a Google Voice or something. You should
there you go. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. So that's differences. What's another maybe similarity or difference that you can think of as far as leadership goes?
I'd say a similarity, and I think it's just intrinsic from me growing up for 30 years with Dad as my father. We look out for the best interest of our employees and our people. I've read a lot of leadership books. The best leaders are those that are not emotional and that can, make a game time decision. And, you're taking the name out of the situation, looking at profitability and numbers. And hey, of course, we have to run a profitable business. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think the reason that people stick around here is because we offer this wonderful work-life balance. Obviously, we're here to service our clients, and we've got to make a living and come in and work every day. But however, we really do treat our employees with a lot of flexibility. We're very understanding people, and we're very family oriented. Obviously, we're in a family business, and family at the end of the day is one of the most important things. So I'd say that's a similarity.
So, Jeremy, have you ever heard of a concept called adult PTO?
Yes.
Okay, it's unlimited PTO. And as an example of what Sam's talking about, we used to bank extra PTO days, and you could carry forward 15 or 20 days. And once you bank that many, then we're burning. Well, we have people, they love working, and they don't need to take as much time off. And so they're leaving in the last 2 weeks in December because they don't want to burn their PTO. So we just sat everybody down. Probably this is when you first came back. So
no, it was about two-ish years ago.
Okay. And we just said, okay, look, you know what? We've always been flexible. If you need time off, or you got to go to a family funeral, or your kid's sick or whatever. So we're just going to take that to a different level. And we have what we call adult PTO. We're not going to bank it anymore because it's unlimited. And there's got to be a trust there. Like Sam said, we got to show up and work and get our work done and be respectful of others. Because, if an art director just blows something off, that affects everybody that works here, right? So I think our people appreciate that.
Yeah, and then I'd say one more just from a similarity standpoint. I worked at a 2,000 person agency in San Diego, 12 offices worldwide, sexy clients, cool atmosphere, fun employee events, et cetera. And coming back here to a 20-person shop, it's a whole different ballgame. But being an independent agency, having a smaller staff, one thing that I think that the two of us share in common, that's why we're in this business, we take our clients' business very seriously. We have great relationships across the board, Grasshopper, Ditch Witch, Incredible Pizza, and we've got a bunch of other awesome Tulsa and Oklahoma brands. But I think one of the reasons that our clients hire us year over year is not that we're great people to work with, but we take their business so seriously. To your earlier point about results, right? That's what we lose sleep over, is how can we bring better ideas to our clients? How do we kick the competition's ass? We have competitive clients, which I think is really cool. They want to demolish their competition, and we're very competitive people as well. So that passion and that excitement for our client's business translates across the board here. And that's why I think we developed this great work and result-oriented work.
I want to highlight some of the type of work you do and the type of clients you serve. And I'd love for you to start with Ditch Witch. What are some of the things you did? And they've seen an amazing trajectory with their business.
Yeah, I mean, so I remember the day we picked up Ditch Witch almost 20 years ago. We were down in Dallas for the Big 12 basketball tournament. Dad got the phone call from his client, still our client at the time, and one of Dad's really good friends to this day, just through 20 years of relationship. But we have a really cool opportunity with Ditch Witch. We started with them very traditionally, obviously back in 01, 02. Not many agencies get to say that they took a company into the digital age, and we did. We launched them on social media. We launched them digitally. Ditch Witch is this amazing client where if you bring them an idea that's on strategy and they can get behind, they'll let you do it. And there's a lot of brands that don't let you do that. So
yeah, and I'll give Ditch Witch great credit because they are open to new ways of thinking. A lot of B2B manufacturers don't want to take the risk. And a great example of bringing a big idea to them, and Sam mentioned them being so competitive and wanting to, crush the competition. In 2019, we were privy to some new technology in VR, virtual reality. And so they have a drill that they invented that you no longer have to tear up a street. You can be on one side of the street and you need to get a pipe underneath the street. The drill goes under the street, up, up, and you just pull the pipe through. And
this is the biggest product launch in 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So we developed with an outsourced VR company, you put the goggles on and you are sitting in the cab of this drill. And you
amazing.
watch the drill bit go underground and through the water and through the rock and through the dirt and come
it was a roller coaster, and you ended up on the moon. It was pretty cool.
And if you're back in the cab, as you turn around, you're seeing the work environment. It's just incredible if you know what I'm talking about on VR. But anyway,
I have an Oculus Quest 2
there you go.
There you go.
I totally dig VR.
We launched this. Their biggest trade show in the underground construction equipment category is so big, it's only every 2 years. And we launched this at IQ. And we had 3 of these set up. The customers and prospects were lined, and competitor salespeople were lined up waiting to get into these things. And the salesmen for their number one competitor were demolished. They were walking around with their heads hanging down because we just kicked their ass on this deal. It was the talk of the trade show. Really cool. It took some courage for Ditch Witch to we brought them that idea, and they're like, whoa, can you really pull that off? So it's a combination of bringing the right thinking with the right technology and have the client say, yeah, let's give that a shot.
For people who don't know what Ditch Witch does, can you give us an overview a little bit?
Yeah, gosh, how many years ago was it? 75 years ago, an engineer graduate from Oklahoma State University, his name Ed Molzon, invented the gearbox that turns a chain that turns the trencher, the boom that goes into the ground.
He invented the trencher.
He literally invented the trencher, which invented the whole trencher category. And that's what started Ditch Witch. And then they evolved over 75 years. They wanted to be the experts, the leader of underground construction. So if you need to dig a hole, that's where the drill came in.
One of the coolest applications is obviously we rely on the internet for everything. They literally provide the pathway for fiber to the home. So people have internet because of Ditch Witch equipment. Yeah, it's a fascinating world.
That is amazing. So Ditch Witch, let's go to in the food space, because you guys, I know, do a lot in the food space. Incredible pizza.
Yeah, so we just a little backstory. Right before the pandemic, which we're calling the world's worst timing and the world's best timing, we worked with a consultant, and we worked with Rib Crib, which is a 55 location barbecue chain here in the Midwest. They had worked with numerous big agencies down in the Dallas area and Kansas City, and for years had flat sales. And they came to us in their first year after working with us. They had their first top line revenue growth in 8 years. So we said, okay, we're on to something here. Our people loved the food and restaurant world. And so we had a lot of, let's call them heart-to-heart conversations internally. And we decided we've got this great B2B experience. We need to own that with Grasshopper and Ditch Witch, 2 awesome clients of ours. But we decided to launch on the national front in the food space. So we kind of took a leap of faith. And so as you go to our website, everything, we have our B2B segment, but on the nationally, we're going after restaurants and entertainment venues. And we got in touch with Incredible Pizza towards the end of 2020. And they have the most amazing story how they created their brand 20 years ago. Obviously, COVID about killed them. They've got 7 locations across the Midwest, from San Antonio up to Memphis. And we worked with their CEO and VP of marketing. And they were, when the world started to come back to normal earlier this year, they hired us on for a full media and analytics engagement. And we've been working with them, and they have, over the last 20 years, they've got the best sales that they ever had in the history of the company, which is huge. And the cool thing is, back to your, our earlier point about results, they're obviously straight B2C, and their sales today, I mean, they are so reliant on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And our program, we're able to attribute people actually walking into a physical Incredible Pizza location, and we can attribute that to the marketing dollars and the messaging and the creative that's out there. So the cool thing is, we work with them on a daily basis, and we tell them, hey, here's what performed well this week. Here's what didn't. Here's how we're shifting budget and dollars. And here's how we're reallocating money towards different tactics based off performance. That has been an awesome thing for us. Whole different world, just to Dad's point earlier about the B2B and the dealership networks. But it's been a really fun space to be in. And we just picked up a new brand out of the Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania area that's in the food space. So we're starting to get some traction there.
I could go for a barbecue brisket right about now. That sounds delicious.
Right? Yeah, it's about lunchtime and we're hungry.
I am a sucker for barbecue brisket. I almost went to Madison for school, University of Wisconsin, but I almost went to Austin just because the barbecue was so good there. Thanks for sharing that. I want to talk about Grasshopper. You mentioned Grasshopper mowers a couple times and what you did there.
Yeah. Dad, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. Again, because we have that expertise nationally, actually internationally, we do work for Ditch Witch in Europe. We built a reputation in that B2B manufacturing space and had an opportunity 6-7 years ago they're in Mound Ridge, Kansas, which is about a 3.5-hour drive outside of Tulsa. And they asked us to come up, and they were intrigued with what we'd done for Ditch Witch and a couple of other manufacturers that we were working with. And we showed them how the whole program worked and how interrelated the new digital space was with the old traditional space. And at the end of the meeting, the marketing director said, our current agency that we've had for 22 years has never brought this up. And we're like, okay, well, perfect time to change. And they did. And it's hard for a brand to leave their agency of that many years. Yeah. It's their friendship. They had friendships, relationships. And, I think until they saw a glimpse of the future and they weren't in it, that gave them the courage to change. And so a lot of hand holding there because, when you're marching off into a new direction with very hefty budgets, they wanted some assurance that, okay, if we're going to shift these dollars, how are we going to make this work? And they have grown tremendously in the last 7 years. And, our biggest success is clients, they don't just hit the automatic button in January and hire us again. You have to prove your mettle.
Absolutely.
Every day. And the proof is, hey, if it ain't broke, let's don't go fix it. So that's what we strive for. And that's why we're loving the analytics practice coupled with our media group, because that's really where you can prove what's working.
Yeah.
Last question for both of you. Before I ask it, I would love to know, obviously besides the two of you, mentors, colleagues have been influential in your business career. And it doesn't have to be someone it could be like a book or something like that you actually respect in the field or in business. So I'd love to hear each of your, whether it's distant mentor or, mentor colleague that before you answer that, I just want to point people towards littlefieldAgency.com. Everyone check out more. I love their website that you could go B2B and you can click on the food route. I don't know if I've seen many websites that really have that kind of cool look and feel, but it's very, specific to, you can go where you need to go. So go to littlefieldAgency.com to learn more. There's more information about everything that we've talked about there. You can go check out more episodes on inspiredinsider.com as well. And I think it's really cool what you guys do in VR. I think, not just from a B2B standpoint, you could tell they're on the cutting edge, because I believe VR is the future in a lot of realms, and you've already started to implement it for some of these companies, which I think is really cool in B2B and will be in B2C as well. Because I don't know if I've seen anyone really implement. I mean, I've utilized it myself, but from a marketing perspective, I don't know if many people, if anyone, is really doing stuff like that. So it's really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. So from each of you, I'd love to hear distant mentor, books or programs or actual personal mentor. And you can name a few, it's fine. And I know obviously each of you probably have learned a lot from each other. But outside of that, who else would you consider some lessons you learned?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I'll just mention two. Early on in my career, I met a man, his name is George Owens, that was a lawyer. And we have avoided lawsuits and all that kind of stuff, but just business law and good advice and counsel. And over the years, you can imagine in over 40 years, there's ups, there's downs. And when I hit a downside, there's three major times in that we had to let people go out of our control. 1987, 2002, right after 9/11, the two big ones. And I could go to George, and he wasn't in the business that we're in. He just was the voice of calm. And his favorite saying was, I'd go in and I'd be all upset. I'm like, oh my God, I got to let 5 people go, and it's not their fault, and it's not my fault, and they got house payments and car payment. Oh my God, some of these people work for us for a long time. And first thing he would say is, anybody dying? I go, no, nobody's dying. And he goes, okay, so that's the worst thing that can happen. This isn't the worst thing that can happen. So he calmed me down and helped me think through some things when I really needed help. And he passed away about 3 years ago, and I miss talking to him.
Yeah.
My other opportunity, this Magnet CEO network that I've been in for over 30 years, we meet 3 times a year. It's an open book. People share financials, share information, share the good stuff, the bad stuff. I've heard every story you can imagine, and you can learn a lot from how other people have done things and made mistakes, and you can learn from how they've done things well, and you can emulate them. And I've got about 5 really good friends that are CEOs of independent ad agencies that I can call. And now Sam's been in this since he came back. He goes, and now he's on the board there. He's so even more active than I am now. And there's just the ability to talk to somebody that you don't have to explain your business, and they can help you think things through. Has just been tremendously valuable.
Cool. Sam, I know you have a call in a minute, so
hey, yeah,
give me a quick
spiel. Magnet for sure. That's huge. I've got some really good friends that I can call on any given day, and they'll answer. And hey, I'd be remiss. I mean, this guy here on the screen with us, right? He's put up with me for 30 years from a son standpoint. But man, I learned stuff from him all the time. And like I said, wouldn't have been able to get through last year without his guidance and counsel. And it's why we've got the great father-son relationship and a great working relationship. He came from nothing, and he built a pretty sweet little legacy that I get to continue on. So it's a sweet deal.
I love it. Thank you both. Everyone check out littlefieldAgency.com, learn more. And thanks everyone.
Jeremy, thanks, man.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side.